Hi, welcome to episode 5 of What's Ahead for Framingham. I'm Geoff Epstein, the host. I'm running for Mayor of Framingham, and the idea of the show is to bring you up to date and keep you informed of what's happening in the city and what's happening in the campaign. Because November 4th is the critical day for voting, and it's important that everybody be well informed in order to vote with some sense. So today we're going to talk about a number of things, and particularly there's some campaign-related issues. There was a debate on Sunday the 28th at the main library between Mayor Szycki and me, which covered a bunch of topics. It didn't cover environmental issues or infrastructure issues, which was a pity. The environmental issues are going to be covered in a forum put on by Energize Framingham in October, but infrastructure, including roads and roofs and water and sewer, actually a really big problem in Framingham. It's a $400 million problem, $200 million backlog in water and sewer, $100 million in roads, $100 million in roofs. So it's a very large amount of capital project work that needs to be done, which is causing the city a lot of strain, and particularly with the way the mayor is financing water and sewer by raising water rates through the roof. But I had to, in that debate, kind of back that into the closing statement. But that being said, the debate I thought was very useful. It showed the different points of view of me as a candidate and Charlie, and also allowed some insight into mayoral temperament, because a mayor should be doing quite a number of things in relation to the city. Everybody should feel welcome in the mayor's office. People should feel like they can pick up the phone and talk to the mayor without a problem. They should feel like when they're appointed to various commissions and boards, they should not feel like they're obliged during the election to have to put up a yard sign or make a donation, and yet that is happening. So there's subtle pressure on board members at the moment, which is not well known. But although that was not evident, obviously, in the debate, what came across was the mayor's temper at one point, where he kind of got mad at me for telling the truth about solar. And that's in the debate. And then another thing is the mayor should be treating employees well. I've already talked about the way that Bob Lewis, the Director of Department of Public Works, was put out in public to support the mayor's campaign by walking back truthful statements he made a year ago. But at one point in this debate at the main library, up came the question of the charter. The charter changes are up for a vote, yes or no vote, on November the 4th as well. And I had to kind of defend the city clerk's office against what seemed to be a mayoral disconnection from what was going on there, where he kind of implied that maybe they weren't getting the message out on the charter. So we'll come to that. The other thing is, in the Audrey Hall show, which was Audrey Hall put on a show where she interviewed the mayor and then me in sequence, giving us the same set of questions. The mayor actually committed a serious sin. He kind of tried to walk back his role in the Nobscot rezoning. He tried to say that it was all the planning board's problem. They were responsible for that, whereas he was. And so this is a really quite clear instance of the public being told a story that's actually not true. So I want to deal with that. And then finally, I want to deal with a really big environmental issue relating to residential development down at the Stearns Reservoir, where some pristine wooded waterfront land has just been torn apart by developers with no permissions, no permits, no nothing, and they have just made a terrible mess of what was a really nice waterfront area. And the city And the mayor's administration are just standing on the side, almost cheering the developers on as they destroy wooded areas, chop down trees, and dig up the ground without any permissions. So that's the story today. It's a bit negative on the mayor, but that's the truth of the situation. So first, I want to talk about the bit in the debate where we're talking about solar. And so I want first to show a clip of where I was talking about the savings that could be reaped from solar and the fact that we had no new solar installation started in 4 years. And then the mayor tried to make out that he'd been doing solar. So I'd like you first to see the clip and then I'll talk about it.
Mr. Epstein.
Yeah, first, I think the city clerk's office is one of the best run departments in the city, so I have no worry that they're going to inform the voters quite well about the charter. I think the biggest thing in the charter change for me, given the topics that haven't been discussed here, is the Chief Climate and Environment Officer, which is pretty important. There are other things like, what happens when someone in the school committee leaves the city and how do you replace that and this and that and the other. Also, the power of the finance committee in the city council is somewhat reduced because immediately they got the budget submissions from the mayor. It was immediately referred to finance, cutting out the larger council from all of the financial decisions, in my view. And that will remain something important for me because I think the city council has 11 members. They should be all involved in the financial decisions in the city, not 5 of them in some subcommittee. When I was on the school committee, I always had financial things done by the whole committee. But the climate officer, we have had no solar installations put forth or started in the city in 4 years. We had a curbside composting program that could have started 18 months ago if it wasn't for the mayor's obstruction with an 18-month study committee. So environmental affairs are really important. Our carbon footprint has been increasing, and we need to reap the $2 to $3 million a year in utility savings that we could get from solar on every roof and in every parking lot.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Mayor Sositsky, you will be given a 30-second rebuttal.
No, it took 45 minutes before all this nonsense started coming out of his mouth. It's just unbelievable, some of the statements.
Okay, so now you've seen that, you can see that I was saying that there were no new solar starts in 4 years. And that is the case because, in fact, if you look at the record, we have 4 solar installations in the city. And I've got them written down here as to when they were actually funded and signed off on and got going. We have the McAuliffe Library solar roof, which is a small installation, the Fuller solar roof, the Brophy solar canopy, which I suggested actually when I was on the school committee, and then the Farley solar canopy, which was part of the Fuller project, because originally Fuller was going to have a solar roof and then a solar canopy in its main parking lot, but then there was a problem with the main parking lot having ground contamination of some sort, so they put the solar canopy right next to Farley. So those projects were all done, signed off and appropriated, had money appropriated for in March of 2021 for McAuliffe, and the other 3 in the summer of 2021. This is the year before the mayor took office. So they were initiated, planned, all the funding was set up and it was approved by the city council at least 6 months before he took office. And so what the mayor did, and this is reasonable, he made sure that the projects were finished on his watch. But he's trying to claim credit for having done solar installations when all of the initiative that went into them predated his term of office. So you have to be very careful. 4 solar starts were done in 2021, the year before the mayor took office, and 0 were done the next year, and 0 the next year, and 0 the next year, and 0 this year. So we've had 0 solar installations started in 4 years of the mayor's service. And that means a complete lack of initiative. It means a complete stalling of the whole solar effort in a period when the incentives due to the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in the first year of the Sositsky administration in 2022, increased greatly. In fact, they multiplied the return on an investment by a factor of 8. Because if you look at the numbers on these various installations, then you typically get a number of 100,000. I think 380,000 for the Brophy canopy over 25 years, and yet it's more like 3 to 4 million if we did it with the new incentive schemes. But anyway, the bottom line is, the mayor got kind of hot-tempered at me for saying that solar starts had not happened in his administration. So he's trying to create a false narrative that he did had a lot to do with the solar installations, and then he got a bit mad at me for saying that he didn't. So, two narratives, opposing narratives, but in any case, no one deserves to be spoken to like that. That was in full camera view in front of thousands of people who will watch that video. It wasn't supposed to be watched live, but they had a technical problem. But there's the mayor saying, I can't believe what came out of his mouth to me in public. Now, no mayor should be behaving like that. And certainly as mayor, I would never behave like that in public or out of the public view. So that's that one. A bit of what I'd call solar heat. So the next one is relating to the charter. There's a charter vote. Charter changes were researched, and then a list of charter changes proposed by the Charter Review Committee, which did a pretty decent job. There's some changes they should have done but never got to. But I'll talk about that at some other time. What they did is did a reasonable job, quite an arduous job, and they came up with these changes. They were approved by the City Council and they're on the ballot. It's a yes-no vote on November the 4th, up or down on the charter changes. So you can look at that and say, well, what are they? And so at one point in the debate, this came up. And the mayor gave an impression that the city clerk's office was a little bit out to lunch on informing people what was actually happening. So I'll let you watch this video on the mayor's opinion of what was going on. And then I came to the defense of the city clerk's office because they're one of the best run departments in the city, and they are on the ball. So here's the video.
Or so left. So we will be moving into the last block of questions. That last block specifically deals with issues of transparency and city administrative policies. So going back to something I said at the beginning of the debate, there is also going to be a charter change question that would make changes to how Framingham's city government is run. Mayor Sisitsky, starting us off on this block, are you in favor of or opposed to these city charter changes? Why or why not?
We had a charter commission, a charter review committee that reviewed the whole charter a couple of years ago. And they recommended maybe 50 or 60 changes to the charter, a lot of them very detailed changes, but some more significant. And I'm hoping that at some point in the near future, the city clerk will put out a brochure explaining what all the changes are, because I think it's going to be very confusing. It's going to be one question for all of these changes, a yes or a no. And people aren't going to be able to pick and choose what questions they want to support and which ones they don't want to. There's a couple of important ones in there that are going to change the way we do business in terms of timing for preparing our budget, our annual budget. We're going to require the schools to change their schedule for taking care of the budget, and change some other things about how committees are established and everything. On a whole, I would support the changes, but I think people need to be told what these changes are going to be and what the implications are. And it's getting closer and closer to the election, and I don't see anything coming out of the city clerk's office so far. So I would personally vote yes for the changes to the charter, but I think people are going to be very confused and won't know how to vote.
All right, Mr. Epstein.
Yeah, first, I think the city clerk's office is one of the best run departments in the city, so I have no worry that they're going to inform the voters quite well about the charter.
Okay, so you've seen that. Now, what's the actual fact? Was the city clerk's office out to lunch? Well, no, they weren't at all, because the day after the debate, as it turns out, into my mailbox popped a postcard. Who was the postcard from? The city clerk's office. And what was it about? The charter. And now I'll show you here two graphics. The front of this postcard, which is the City of Framingham 2025 ballot question explaining about the charter, what it is, and then there's the front. Take a look. Now we come on to the back, which also explains in a bit more detail on how you can get more information. There's the kind of signature that you can scan to get more information. So the clerk's office was right on the ball, have been sending these postcards out. The mayor obviously didn't know about this. So how come the mayor is so disconnected from the city clerk's office on a really important issue? He supports the charter changes, just like me. But there's no reason to imply that the city clerk's office wasn't sending out information in a timely fashion. And so, you know, how often does the mayor go down to the city's clerk's office and find out what's up? Well, apparently never, because this is a really important thing. All he had to do was pick up the phone, talk to Lisa Focus and say, what's going on with that? And certainly, as mayor, I would never say the things the mayor just said about the clerk's office. And you don't want to imply, like, I don't know what they're up to, I don't know what they're doing. You would never say that in public. If you've got an issue with the clerk's office, you go to the clerk, the city clerk, and ask them what's going on. So again, there was the Bob Lewis incident and now the clerk's office incident, and just bad mayoral behavior. So what I want to now go on to is the Audrey Hall show, which is pretty serious a problem. And here we have video from the Audrey Hall show in which the mayor tries to walk back his role in the Nobscot rezoning of the Edmonds Edgell parcel, and he claims that the planning board is the body that was the one that was responsible for that, not him. So I'll let you watch the video.
Okay, great. Will you support significant zoning changes for more dense development in Nobscot and Saxonville, and specifically the land in Nobscot that's located near the intersection of Edmonds and Edgell Roads that was recently considered for development under the MBTA zoning?
Yes. Yes to you. I understand the question, not yes to the answer.
Okay.
No, I don't propose, and I never did. And that's a misconception that a lot of people have, that I was the one leading the fight to increase the zoning in Nobscot by a large density. And it wasn't me. I never proposed that. That was done by the planning board. When the MBTA Communities Act came into account, they wanted the city to make sure we had enough zoning by right to accommodate about 4,400 new apartments. And people thought that that burden should be spread around the community, not in one area of the city. And so the proposals were made to look at other areas of the city. Nobscot was one of them. Some people, including members of the planning board, thought that the density there should be increased greatly. I never supported that.
So now there's that video where it's clear that the mayor is not taking full responsibility for what he did, because he makes it sound like, oh, in September of last year it just popped into view as all the planning board. But in fact, a year before, in November of 2023, he sent a letter to the state. And here I have what is now is the letter that was sent. Now I'm going to show you an image on the screen, which is a snapshot of the front page, but I'll read what it says. It's dated November the 6th, 2023, and it says, Dear Mr. Sarkisian, Mayor Sositsky has authorized you to request an advisory opinion as to whether a 31-acre of land off of Edgell Road is an eligible location essentially for rezoning. Your request is in connection with the proposed development of that area, which would include rezoning to allow multifamily housing. This request asks whether that area is an eligible location and so on and so on. So what the mayor sent into the state was, is this area, the big one over 30 acres of land, which there was a big controversy about, and the state's coming back saying, oh yes, it's perfectly fine to rezone that. And then the mayor stayed silent on that for the next 10 months until it popped into view in the planning board, and then he's saying that, oh well, that controversial parcel, I never had anything to do with it. It came out of the planning board. And so it's totally not true. The mayor had checked whether that parcel was eligible for rezoning well before it popped into the view of the public in a planning board meeting. The planning board meeting didn't propose this. It came from the mayor through his Planning and Community Development Office with Sarkis Sarkisian, the director. So this is completely untrue. The mayor is not being truthful here about his role in the Nobscot affair. And so that's very important in the election. Is this a mayor you can trust? Well, you obviously cannot trust the mayor on this particular issue. It's just a little bit worse than the solar one. So now we want to go on to the environmental issue. There's a terrible thing happening down at Stearns Reservoir, where I wrote a Framingham Observer article about it, but actually it was a guest article by the residents, one of them, a couple of them on Cherryoka Lane, which is off Salem End Road, just near the bridge where the Stearns Reservoir is. And what has happened is this has been destroyed, this area of woodland. And there are 3 videos I want you to show you, which talk about it. The background is that this is at about the 334 to 344 Salem End Road. It was a big wooded lot bought, and then you noticed some kind of development was going to happen. They had those bales out the front. And then one day people came in and started destroying trees. And Nanette Magnani has a wonderful video from a meeting in which she describes what happened. And then there's a further video clip by one of the other neighbors who lives on Grisboska Circle, and then a further one. So there's 3 videos, all by local residents, and I'll let these videos play one after the other. So we see first Nanette's summary of what happened, and then the second resident talking about what happened here from his point of view, from a more general point of view. And the second was Peter Pleshaw. The third one, I don't have the name of the resident at this point. But you'll get the picture. So I'll show these videos one after another.
Members of the audience. Yeah, name and address up top, and then absolutely. No, I know, but you got to take the mic, just otherwise I'm getting yelled at all night tonight, so we don't need to keep it going.
You're talking about 4 trees they hadn't cut down? By the time you got out there, we called you probably sometime in the early spring. They had started cutting trees down probably last November. By the time you got there, all there were stumps, and they had probably pulled out those stumps already. They cut a lot of trees down in the 125-foot zone. Plus, they took all the brush out in the 125-foot zone. In my knowledge, it was a cease and desist order not to do anything. Not to build, because they weren't building anyway.
Right.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams.
By the way, I have no idea what he was talking about with the trees and the whatever.
No, I didn't either.
Good.
Anybody else? Yes. Yes, Ms. Mignani.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Nanette Magnani, and I live at 13 Cherryoka Lane, which the property under question is across the street from me. I guess in addition to what was being said, I just want to give you a sense that what happened in May felt like a raping of the land. I felt like I was in a movie. And this was by no means some small grandmother operation of somebody mistakenly cutting down a tree. They had huge pieces of equipment. They had chainsaws. And within a matter of 5 to 6 days, they went in and decimated 3 to 4 acres of land. So my question is, one, this was a business strategic question or decision to do this. Why would we not fine them $300 a day because it was not a mistake? It was intentional. And if we give them 3 months, that's $18,000 at least. I think that the city could use that money. And I would hope if we can't recoup any money now and reverse that decision, that in the future we wouldn't be so naive as to think that they made a mistake. It wasn't. And if you're going to fell that many trees and put that much money into tearing it down and felling the land or the trees, you know that they know what they want to build there.
Right.
So I think from a neighborhood and a citizen participation perspective, there ought to be transparency in the process. And I know that there's been a question over the fence. In one issue, it said that the fence was not more than 6 feet, and there was a discrepancy about how do you measure that 6 feet. Then there was a discrepancy that the fence should be 4 inches above the ground for conservation and for animals to be, small animals to be able to move freely underneath the fencing. If the neighbors thinks there is a discrepancy, why not invite them in? Many of them are retired. They certainly have the time to go over and go with you to measure the fence so that everybody's happy that the guidelines are being followed, rather than having it be, no, this is it, no, that's it. It should be a joint mutual process between citizens, neighbors, and the city. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mignani.
12 Cherry Oak Lane, Ryan Burgess. They've had backhoes over there. This isn't just wheelbarrows. They've had earth-moving equipment. I was down the Cape last week. My daughter came over to bring in some mail. They had backhoes over there. I have them on my Ring camera. My neighbors have witnessed it as well 3 times since there was some type of stop order. They're completely disregarding this. When it comes to permits, I talked to the landowner, or I don't know, one of the several people who are very dismissive. They said that they had permits. So they're just very disingenuous and lying to everybody involved. So we'll see what happens in the future. But they have earth-moving equipment. Are they allowed to have backhoes and to move the earth? No. Okay, so they have several times. I'll try to send you. I'll try to find the Ring footage and I'll send it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abramson. Mr. Plesher on the back.
I wasn't going to say anything. Peter Plushaw, Graboska Circle. But I'm sitting back there and getting hot, so I have to say something.
You knew it was coming.
I've lived here all my life, except for three years in the military. My father was a very big, was involved in the town as a postmaster. I was involved in the town as a police officer, and I've been on town meetings, things like that. Whatever. Perception as you go up the Salem End Road, nice historical road. You can't even build a sidewalk without getting the state's approval because it's a historical road. This property, and I've lived there 40 years on Nebraska Circle, and this property has probably been empty for, Phil could probably figure that out, to 12, 15 years or whatever, and it's always been nice. And as you buy your property and the people come to town and say, hey, that's Salem End Road, and it's historic, it's a beautiful area, as well as Nixon Road and Grove Street and the other things like that. So that's right. The law says that you have private property. You can do anything you want on your private property and take down the trees. But this was very close to the reservoir, This is very close to the, I believe, what they call the superintendent's home. And Mr. Kwan has always been thinking about what he wants to do in Framingham. So I'm sitting back there just saying, what do developers look at Framingham for? Can they come to Framingham because it's easy to get permits, easy to get things done, and just make the total town become changed? And if that's what it is, then why be in Framingham? I mean, Framingham is not a Wellesley, not a Natick, not a Weston or anything else. It's a blue-collar town, a good mix of other people that are managers and engineers and things like that. A real good American city. And I just get upset because I go to some of the planning board meetings and see where they take, like, Boyle's Funeral Home is now going to have 6 stories of apartments on Union Avenue right up here in a nice residential area. Or down and back where the Eagles is, they're building this monstrosity down there. But that's great by the railroad trains, so you can get in the apartments and you can listen to the choo-choos go by. But I just perception. Why don't we say no? Why don't we say no to some of the things? I know there's laws, but you can say no, we can push it out and maybe go to land court and push it out for 5 years, and maybe they can't do something. Keep your town or your city as it was. I understand change, but I feel sorry for the people of Cherokee. I can remember Cherokee when it was Cherokee, and it's a shame. So those are my comments. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Pletcher. Anybody else?
Okay, so now the videos are shown. Up on the screen I can show 2 images of this site. There's the first image, which shows, it's an aerial shot, which shows outlined in kind of off red what the site looked up at, what it looked like before it was destroyed. And so there it is now. And then we'll show the after the developers got through with it. And this is a view from a drone, which is sitting up in the air, probably a bit above Salem Road, looking towards the lake on the side. Now, there are a number of things to notice here. There's no trees in this area. As Nanette said, and other folks confirmed, there's a lot of damage done here. When you bring equipment in for 6 days and hack down trees, you're not just cutting 2 trees down or 4 trees down, which was what the developer is claiming, but a lot more trees were chopped down within the 125 foot from the water zone, which is state-controlled land where you can't take trees down. We have a terrible tree ordinance in Framingham where you can basically chop down any tree on your own property, as compared to, say, Brookline, which is a strict tree ordinance where you can't do that. If a tree is at the 4.5 feet off the ground and it's more than 6 inches in diameter, you have to get permission to take it down. We need to get a tree ordinance like that because trees are being mowed down all over the place. But this one had them all mowed down within that state-controlled boundary. Secondarily, you note all the ground has been torn up. There were backhoes in there. You need a permit called a land disturbance permit to do that. They got no permits. So this developer deliberately went here and tore down everything without permission, knowing that it was against the law. And that's, I think the 3 residents got it completely right. This is development run riot. And now they want to put in single-family territory there, which would accommodate under normal circumstances, 2 to 4, single-family houses. That's what it's zoned for. They want to put a 94-unit building in there, which is supposedly under the Dover Amendment, which allows religious and educational institutions to come in and override the zoning that you have locally in order to put in some educational or religious institutional building for some purpose. What they're putting in there, their plan is to just put residential apartments in there which have nothing to do with students and have nothing to do with education. They're kind of trying to smokescreen us into thinking that this is something that's good because the New England Center for Children purportedly has a lease for a building that hasn't been built yet with the developer, and therefore, because they're an educational institution, and I have no problem with them, they actually have their operation in Southborough. They want this to be staff residential accommodation. And you know, when you do the Dover Amendment, if you're putting a playing field in for students or a dormitory for students or you're putting in some religious purposed building, then it has a durable religious or education purpose, and that makes a lot of sense. But this makes no sense because, oh, well, there's a lease on a building that's going to be built, so we build the building, suppose they got permission under that basis. What if then the people who have the lease, New England Center for Children, at the end of the lease they walk away, or they decide before they actually occupy the building that they don't want to, then you've got a building with no particular purpose other than residences. And then you can go and market that as prime waterfront condominiums to anybody who would want it. You make tens of millions of dollars out of it with 94 units. So you can imagine that. That's quite apart from the other thing, which is anyone who's been on Salem End Road approaching Temple Street from the Ashland direction knows that that is a huge backup in the morning. And you can imagine 100 cars, one parking space for each of these units, 94 cars coming out of there into a line of traffic, trying to turn left to go to Southborough, or even if they turn right, how do they get into that line of traffic? So it would fail on a traffic study, it would fail on the Dover Amendment. So this is just a ploy by the developer to try and get past. Now you say normally, you'd expect then, oh, they'll never make it. But we have a city department that's not leveled one single fine on this developer for doing all that environmental mayhem, is quite happy to see residential development go on at high density in lots that are wooded areas, like in Nobscot, it's the same thing. Nobscot, they clear-cut trees and had the same kind of environmental disaster as here. So we're losing Framingham here. We're losing our open space, and developers are coming in. And when the bill says, the mayor says, oh, all of this pays the bills, well, you know, our tax revenue base is about $220 million. New development total is maybe $2 to $3 million a year in property tax income. And it's not clear that although you get the added property taxes, the infrastructure the city has to support for 50, 70, 100 years, replace all those pipes, and then you get traffic, which, you know, eventually puts a lot of damage onto the roads over a long term. So there's never been, for any of the residential developments, an impact statement by the city saying how much money we make. And I remember looking back at the Mount Waite Buckley development at one point and finding out that it made almost no money net. So, you know, you get a few $1 million in added new development every year when most of the bills are paid by the tax base we already have. 220 million versus a few million a year. There is no way that this city needs residential development like this to pay the bills. So here's the thing, the mayor is on the wrong side of development here. He's just got a very light touch on the developers doing this. He's got a very heavy touch and pressure on the local neighbourhoods. They're all very upset about it here, as they were and remain so in Nobscot. So the question is, which side is the mayor on? Is he on the developer's side or is he on the side of the community? That's one thing. The other is, are you getting a straight story from the mayor on anything? Certainly on Nobscot we didn't get a straight story, and then he got mad at me in the debate for telling you the truth on solar panels. So this election is about planning, it's about reasonable development, it's about preserving the environment that we have. Open land management is very important. It's about traffic being reasonable. And all the other issues, education and this and that and the other, in all of them, the community is getting a false narrative. They're getting a false narrative on education. It's just great, says the mayor. No, it's not. It's going downhill. Infrastructure, well, you to watch those water bills are going to go up in 2 years. He doesn't tell you about that, but it will. And I have a solution for that, which will mean no tax increase. In fact, water bills will go down under my watch. So where are we going to go in the next 4 years? We can't keep on going in a direction that is reflected by this devastated lot or by the mayor's misinformation on education and infrastructure and zoning and planning and Nobscot and now the Stearns Reservoir. So I say this, if you want a straight up approach to how the city should be run, if you want a breath of fresh air, if you want someone who's completely different to come in and change the whole culture of the city government from this one of hiding the problem to talking about problems and also protecting our neighbourhoods and protecting our woodlands and making sure our kids get a good education, I'm the one. So I'm right now going to start asking for votes. I'm going to ask for your vote on November the 4th. And that is what will make a big difference to the city, and we'll see good practices come back. We'll see people who will have a mayor who answers the phone and answers emails and is on Facebook and